Heaven Official's Blessing. Guan by Mo Xiang Dong Xiu. Read by Plantbones. Chapter 8, Part 1. Shortened Distance, Adrift in Sandstorms. Even though its rogue records and rumors you read, the kingdom of Baiyue certainly existed, Xiaolian explained. Oh, Sunlang said. Just then, Nanfeng completed an interweaving array on the ground and called out to others in the room. It's done. When shall we go? Xiaolian quickly packed a small bag and came to the door. Let's go now. He placed his hand on the door and recited, By the Heaven Official's blessing, no paths are bound. Then he pushed gently. When the door was pushed open, it was no longer a small hillside outside. What replaced it was a wide city avenue. As wide as the streets were, there were barely anyone on the road. Maybe one or two pedestrians every now and then. This wasn't only because it was late in the evening, but because the population in the far northwest was already small, on top of being this close to the Gobi. Even in broad daylight, there wasn't many walking about. Xiaolian closed the door behind him, and there was no longer Puzi's shrine inside but the small inn. That one step certainly was thousands of miles, the miracle of the teleportation array. A couple of pedestrians walked by, grumbling as they stared at them, appearing quite guarded. Sunlang spoke up from behind Xiaolian. According to all historical records, when the moon sinks in the sky, follow the North Star, and you will come upon the kingdom of Baiyue. Gogo, look. Sunlang pointed to the sky. There's the North Star. Xiaolian looked up and smiled. It's so bright. Sunlang stepped closer to stand beside Xiaolian. He cast a glance at him, and then looked up too. Yeah, it seems the night sky in the northwest is somehow more uplifting than the central plains. Xiaolian agreed, and the two became immersed in serious discussion on stars and the night sky. Meanwhile, the two junior officials behind them watched in disbelief. Nanfeng questioned, Why is he here too? The door you created looked so magical. I followed along to check it out. Sunlang replied innocently. Check it out? Do you think this is a fun tour? Nanfeng shouted angrily. Xiaolian rubbed his forehead and said, Let's go. Since he's here, he's here. You won't eat your rations. I should have enough. Sunlang, stay close to me. Don't get lost. Okay, Sunlang responded, looking obedient and good. This wasn't a question of rations. Xiaolian sighed. Nanfeng, please keep it down. It's the middle of the night. Everyone is sleeping. Let's just focus on the task at hand. Stop sweating the small stuff. Let's go, let's go. The four followed the North Star and traveled northward. After walking non-stop for an entire night, the towns and greenery along the way became more and more sparse, and the ground slowly gave way to sand. Finally, they reached the Gobi Desert. Although the teleportation array could cross over 500 kilometers in one step, it used an exhaustive amount of spiritual power. The farther one went, the more spiritual power it sapped, and the time it took to restore that spiritual power also lengthened. This one step Nanfeng helped them make would require at least several hours to recover from. To conserve strength in case of an unforeseen battle, Xiaolian decided not to have Fuyao perform the same conjuring. For a journey such as this, someone must have their spiritual powers at full strength. In a desert climate, the difference between night and day was extreme. The nights were freezing to the bone, but not too bad. However, when it became day, it was another story. The sky was clear and cloudless, giving way to a scorching sun. It was as if they were walking in a steam oven, cooking them alive from the ground. Xiaolian led the way, using the direction of the wind and small vegetation growing under rocks to find their path. After a while, he looked back, worried that someone might not be able to keep up. Nanfeng and Fuyao were obviously fine being immortal and all. Seeing Sunlang, though, made him laugh. Under the blazing sun, the youth had peeled off his outer red tunic and was using it to block the sun, looked tired and cranky. His skin was pearl white and his hair coal black, and with the red tunic covering his face, his features seemed even more accentuated. Xielian removed his bamboo hat and put it on Sunlung's head. Here, I'll lend it to you. Sunlung blinked. Then a moment later he smiled. It's all right, he said and returned the hat to him. Xielian didn't argue. If the boy didn't need it, there was no need to push. Let me know if you need it then. Xielian straightened the hat on his head and continued walking. After a while, the group noticed a small gray building in the midst of all the sand. Upon closer inspection, it appeared to be an abandoned inn. Xielian looked at the sky and saw it was just past noon and time for the worst of the heat. They had walked all night. It was time for a break. Xielian led the group inside and they found a table to sit and settle at. Xielian took out a water bottle from his bag and handed it to Sunlung. Do you want some? Sunlung nodded, reached for the water, and drank from it before Xielian took it back to drink some himself. He gulped down the water, his Adam's apple rolling up and down as he drank. He felt the coolness pass down his throat, incredibly refreshing. Next to him, Sunlung had his arm propping up his chin, stealing glances as Xielian drank. A moment later he asked, Is there any more? Xielian wiped away the bit of water that was caught on his moistened lips, then nodded and passed over the water bottle again. Sunlung was about to reach for it when another hand blocked him from the water bottle in Xielian's grip. Hang on, Fu Yao said. He retrieved his own water bottle from his sack and put it on the table, pushing it towards Sunlung. I have one too. Go ahead. Xielian immediately knew what he was planning. Knowing Fu Yao's personality, there was no way he'd ever share his water bottle. He and Nanfeng had talked about testing Sunlung the night before, so the liquid in the bottle must be unmasking water. If a normal human was to drink a potion such as this, nothing would happen. However, if they were anything but human, the unmasking water would force its drinker to reveal their true form. Since Nanfeng and Fu Yao wanted to test to see if the youth was a supreme, the effects of the potion had to be considerable. Sunlung smiled. Goga and I can share one bottle. It's fine. Fu Yao and Nanfeng eyed Xielian. He thought, what are you both looking at me for? Fu Yao said coldly, It's almost empty. Don't worry, help yourself. Really? Then you two go ahead first, Sunlung said, politely declining. Those two both fell silent. A moment later, Fu Yao tried again. You're a guest. You go first. Fu Yao sounded polite and well-mannered, but Xielian thought he must have squeezed those words through his teeth. Sunlung also made a pleased gesture. You two are followers of the host. Please drink first. Otherwise it'd be indecent of me. Xielian watched the three of them play this silly game of false pleasantries and pitied the sad water bottle being roughly pushed around the table with barely hidden force. He shook his head. He could feel the poor table tremble from their power and interplay and feared it might not have long to live. The secret battle went back and forth for several rounds, when finally Fu Yao snapped and sneered. You not accepting this water means you have a guilty conscience. Sunlung replied with a smile. You're unfriendly and refuse to drink first. Who knows if you've poisoned the water? Maybe you're the one with a guilty conscience. Fu Yao pointed at Xielian. You can very well ask him whether this water is poisoned. Is the water poisoned, Gogo? Sunlung turned to Xielian. It was quite the cutting question. Technically, unmasking water was a potion that exposed one's true form and didn't harm real people. Xielian replied slowly, It's not poisoned, but... Fu Yao and Nanfeng focused their glare on Sunlung, and he surprisingly let go of his grip on the bottle. All right. Sunlung grabbed the bottle and shook it playfully in his hand. If Guka says it's okay, I'll take a drink. He gulped down the contents of the bottle in one go. Xielian didn't think he'd be so straightforward and was shocked. Nanfeng and Fu Yao were stunned too and tensed immediately. Yet who knew, after Sanlang drank all that unmasking water, he shook the bottle again, then threw it over his shoulder where it crashed and shattered. Tastes bad. Bewilderment flashed across Fu Yao's face when he saw that unmasking water did nothing to Sanlang. A moment later, he replied coolly, "It's only water. Doesn't it all taste the same? What difference is there?" Sanlang reached for the water bottle next to Xielian's elbow again and replied, "Of course it's different. This one tastes much better." Xielian smiled despite himself. Sunlong really didn't care about any challenges being thrown his way, nor did he care about his true identity. So other than entertainment, this fight was meaningless. Xielian thought that would be the end of it. But Nanfeng stood up and dropped a sword onto the table with a loud clang. With such a strong battle aura surrounding him, at first Xielian thought Nanfeng intended to end Sanlang for good. It left him speechless for a moment. "What are you doing?" "The road ahead is dangerous," Nanfeng stated darkly. "This is my gift to our little buddy, for self-defense." The sheath of the sword was an ancient design and bore wear and tear from passing ages. It was no ordinary sword. Xialian's eyes widened in recognition, and he put his hand over his forehead and turned away. He muttered to himself, "It's Hangjin." The name of the sword was indeed Hangjing, meaning red mirror. It was a sacred sword. While it could not fight evil, no evil could escape its spiritual mirror. Should any non-human entities pull it from its sheath, the blade would turn red as if covered in blood, and the crimson blade would reflect the true form of that which unsheathed it. Whether wrath or supreme, none could escape. There was no young man who would not be interested in swords or horses, so Sunlong appeared rather intrigued. "Oh, let me see." Sheath in one hand, hilt in the other, Sunlong pulled at the sword. Nanfeng and Fu Yao stared intently. But when merely 8 centimeters of the sword was pulled out, Sunlong laughed. "Gaga, are your servants playing a joke on me?" Xielian cleared his throat and turned back around. "Sunlong, I already told you you're not servants." Then he spun back. "Who's joking around with you?" Nanfeng demanded coolly. "How can one defend oneself with a broken sword?" Sunlong sheathed the sword and threw it back onto the table. Nanfeng's face froze for a moment, then he immediately picked the sword up to check. He pulled it from the sheath and heard a clunk, and suddenly his hand was now a sharp and chilling, broken sword. Hongjin's blade was broken 8 centimeters down. Nanfeng's face changed colors, and he turned the sheath upside down. There was a clattering sound of a mess of clinks and clanks. What was left of the blade within the sheath was now broken into 8 sharp little fragments. The Hongjing sword was a powerful weapon that could expose its enemies. That wasn't a lie, but Nanfeng had never heard of any technique that could break it from within its sheath. Nanfeng and Fu Yao both Nanfeng and Fu Yao both pointed at Sunlong and cried, "You!" Sunlong snickered and leaned back in his chair, putting his black-booted feet up on the table. He tossed one of the broken pieces in his hand in the air to play with it. "I'm sure you guys didn't do it on purpose and just weren't careful enough with it on the road. Don't worry about me. I don't need some broken sword as protection. Keep it yourselves." As for Xielian, he simply couldn't look at Hong Jin directly. The sacred sword used to be a part of Junwu's collection. During his first ascension, Xielian once visited Junwu's palace and thought that, despite its lack of combat power, Hong Jin was an interesting sword. So Junwu gifted it to him. After the first banishment, there was a time when things had gotten really hard, and Xielian gave the sword to Feng Xin to be pawned. That's right, pawned! For the money made from pawning Hong Jing was enough to fill their stomachs for a few meals. Xielian had pawned off too many treasures during that time, and he had forced himself to forget every single one of them, lest his heart bleed with regret. Feng Xin remembered the sword after his ascension, and couldn't bear having a sacred object lost among mortals, so he managed to find it again. It was sharpened, cleaned, and hung at the palace of Nanyang, and now it had been brought down by Nanfeng. In any case, whenever Xialian saw that sword, his head would faintly ache, so he could only look away. He could sense the other three were about to start bickering again, and shook his head. Instead, he carefully observed the weather outside. The wind was picking up. Xialian noted there might be a sandstorm later. If they continued on their way, would they be able to find shelter? Just then, over the golden sand, two shadows suddenly flashed by. Xialian straightened up immediately. Two silhouettes, one black, one white, sauntered unhurriedly but rapidly, as if they were gliding through clouds. One dressed in black was slender and elegant. The one dressed in white, on the other hand, was a female cultivator, with a sword on her back and a whisk in hand. As they sped by the abandoned inn, the black figure didn't look back once. But the white figure glanced over and smiled. That smile, like their forms, gone in a flash, but leaving a foreboding, strange feeling. It was only because Xialian had been keeping an eye on the outside that he caught the scene. But the other three probably only saw their retreating backs. Nanfeng rose instantly. "Who was that?" Xialian stood up too. "I don't know, but they're definitely not ordinary people." After a moment's deliberation, he said, "The wind is picking up. Stop playing around. Let's go as far as we can." Although the bickering trio constantly argued, they nevertheless sealed their hearts to do what they came here to do. So they immediately stopped butting heads and cleaned up the pieces of Hongjing before heading out the door. The four of them continued their trek, now against a blowing headwind. They walked for another 4 hours, wind howling in their ears, but the progress they made was nothing compared to the distance they were able to cover earlier in the day. The whipping gusts grew stronger, and the wind whipping the sand battered their faces and bodies, beating at uncovered skin. The more they advanced, the more difficult it became. Gusts became deafening gales, and whirling sand filled the air around them, obscuring their path. Xialian, holding his bamboo hat down, called out, "This sudden storm feels strange." No one answered him, and Xialian looked back, afraid that someone might be lost. But all three were present and following. Just no one had heard him. The gales were so strong that his voice was swallowed up. He wasn't particularly worried about Nanfeng and Fu Yao. Even with crazed winds whipping, the two walked steadily, full of killing intent. Sun Lung, on the other hand, followed closely behind Xialian, never more than 5 steps away. Even with so much sand blowing and thrashing about, Sun Lung remained calm and collected, hands clasped behind him as he walked. His red tunic and black hair danced wildly in the wind, as if he hadn't any care in the world. Xialian could feel how hard the sand was hitting his face, and was worried how little Sun Lung seemed to mind. He opened his mouth to tell the youth to watch out for sand getting in his eye and sleeves, but figured he wouldn't hear anything he'd say. So Xialian reached over directly to help fold in his sleeves, patting them down to make sure no sand would get in. Sun Lung was taken aback by the sudden gesture. The other two behind them approached, and with everyone in better hearing range, Xialian tried talking again. "Be careful, everyone. This wind came out of nowhere. It's not right. There may be evil within." "It's just a little sandstorm. How evil can it be?" Fu Yao said. Xialian shook his head. "The wind is all right. It's what the sand might carry that I'm worried about." Just then a powerful gust whipped by, blowing Xialian's bamboo hat off. It flew off. If it flew off, it would disappear into the desert forever. But Sun Lung immediately grabbed it, just in time, with an abnormally fast hand. He returned the bamboo hat to Xialian once more, and Xialian thanked him. As he retied the hat onto his head, he said, "We should probably find shelter for the time being." Fu Yao countered, "If there's evil in this sandstorm trying to stop us from advancing, then we must continue." Before Xialian could say anything, Sun Lung burst out laughing. Fu Yao's head shot up, and he coldly demanded, "What are you laughing at?" Sun Lung folded his arms and chuckled. Does being contradictory give you the satisfaction of feeling unique and independent? Celian had thought before that although this youth was always smiling, it was often difficult to discern whether it was genuine or purposefully courteous as a form of mockery. This time, however, anyone could tell that there was not a trace of sincerity in his smile. Fu Yao's eyes grew dark and Celian raised his hand. Stop right there, you two. If you've got things to say, you can say them later. It won't be funny if the wind gets any stronger. What, you think the wind will blow you away? Fu Yao mocked. Yes, that very well may Celian didn't finish before the three in front of him suddenly vanished. Actually, they weren't the ones who vanished. He did. Another powerful gust had carried him away for real. A twister.